People who work in Hollywood, what's the most messed up thing you've witnessed in the business? I lived in LA in the 90s. I worked on the fringes of the industry. But my company printed a lot of movie posters, so I saw a lot of folks when delivering proofs and such at different lots and offices. But where I ran into stuff was from when I had a second part-time job at Banana Republic, and the majority of the kids who worked there were all struggling actors, writers, etc. There were a lot of TV shows that were outfitted by BR, and people's party lives crossed over. The amount of times I would be at house parties in which there was a mountain of cocaine on a coffee table was mind-boggling to me, and it was usually a gift that was given to one of those kids from someone in the industry, according to them. I once helped Alan Rickman with finding some pants, and he was incredibly nice. I rang him up, wrapped and bagged his stuff, and said, "Here are your pants, Mr. Rickman." He chuckled at me, took his bag, turned around to the other people in line behind him, and proclaimed, "Yes, these are Alan Rickman's trousers." I still find it hilarious to this day. You should have said, "Ah, yes, Alan Rickman, our new celebrity." I lived in LA for 15-ish years and worked in the industry. The things that are not NDA protected are seeing Lindsay Lohan doing lines of coke off the back of a toilet in a club bathroom. This was during the height of the Fire Foch incident. A not married, but in a long-term committed relationship, Ty Pennington during extreme home makeover having with local production assistants and promising to set them up in LA, one of which ended up pregnant and was forced to have an abortion by him. My married executive producer texting me at 3 in the morning in an attempt to get me to sleep with him. Absolutely didn't happen. Then being pissed when I told everyone, and tried to say it was a joke, and I should lighten up. Another creepy EP that allowed rumors to spread that he was sleeping with me, and when I asked him to clear it up, he chuckled and patted my head saying something along the lines of, "Oh, they won't believe me anyway." On a reality shoot, seeing cast member get groped by a rando on camera and the EP not letting me shut it down, intervene or at least pause filming once the guy left so she could process off camera and decide if she wanted to continue. An older, 50s-60s, director of photography clearly sleeping with the 18-year-old, very Niave, AC who came to me asking if I could take her to get Plan B and if I could help her find an OBGYN because she had never been to one and her family wouldn't allow it. The female EP and production manager knew and encouraged it. That's what I remember off the top of my head. That doesn't include any of the actual reality content that I worked on, just real life stuff. The best thing I ever saw was not on a set, but sitting at a bus stop on Santa Monica Boulevard. An older Mercedes pulls up to the red light blaring classical music out of the open windows. I look up to see a mess of dark curly long hair and realize it's Slash. Truly a badass moment. I was 20 or 21 and about to board a plane to film a low-budget shoot in Romania. As I was getting into the van to the airport, a producer came up to me with a blank envelope. "Hey, I need you to give this to the producer, Vlad, when you get there." "What is it?" $25,000 in cash. "Don't declare it at customs." I was a kid, so I did it. Production assistant here. Had to sign so many NDAs about celebrities doing hard drugs between takes. The worst was watching them pressure young actresses into joining them. Some of these girls were barely 18. An NDA doesn't protect against crime. This is a crime. Yes, but some people also want a job, and if you report it, you better prepare for an entirely new field for a career. I don't work in the industry but know a bunch of people who do. My favorite story is the filming of Black Hawk Down was delayed because Tom Sizemore got a really nasty infection on his face when a Moroccan prostitute peed on his face. Apparently that's the reason he keeps his helmet on the whole movie. My husband's friend went to prison for Sizemore. He was his driver years ago in CT, and Tom had a shit ton of drugs with him. They got pulled over because Tom was insistent the guy speed hurry up to where they were going. Then, Tom told the cops all the drugs were the driver's and they simply just said okay. Tom Sizemore was responsible for him going to prison. Sizemore never told the truth. This fella ended up dying shortly after he was released due to an ear infection. Prisons have terrible healthcare. Fuck you, Sizemore. Commercial shoot with bodybuilders. The producer asked the client on set if they wanted to be oil boys and lube up the bodybuilders. They gladly took up the offer and spent 30 minutes oiling up the bodybuilders. who had no choice but just to take it even though I could tell they weren't comfortable. At the time, everyone was laughing and joking around, including the bodybuilders, but looking back, it was pretty messed up to put them in that situation. Relatively tame, but gross, worked on a show where the lead would deliberately eat huge amounts of raw garlic, onions, and canned tuna before kissing scenes as a fucked up power play over the actresses who he was partnered with for the scene. Jennifer Lawrence admitted to doing this same thing in the Hunger Games. Honestly, nothing to do with celebrities. The most fucked up thing is watching a 22-year-old PA climbing into a big white box truck at the end of a 14-hour shoot at 1 a.m. and driving back from the boonies after crushing a few beers and a couple bumps. I've heard of some bad accidents involving sleep-deprived grunts trying to break in. Worked on a movie set where a white stunt double showed up for Jonathan Majors and was in blackface. I think the excuse was they couldn't find a black stunt double in New Mexico, but he was, understandably, pissed, and it made everyone super uncomfortable. While I've seen my fair share of drug use and horrible people, my most fucked up moment was when Gary Busey put on a ginger dead man mask, grabbed me by the sides of my face and screamed crazy loud. A portion of my soul evaporated. All you had to say was Gary Busey. I remember him telling someone he was gonna reach inside their body and rip out their endocrine system. What? He's so crazy. There was a Gary Busey story I read where a writer was interviewing him and asked him what the strangest place he'd done cocaine off of was. He said Gary went deathly quiet, and it seemed that the writer had crossed a line. The next day, the writer said, Gary Busey's agent called him up. The writer braced for a tongue lashing. The agent simply explained that Gary was thinking hard about all the places he had snorted coke from, and it took some thought. He decided it was his dog. Some coke had spilled on the dog and Gary didn't want to let it go to waste. I lived there. At the time, Pink had a little dog named Fucker. Tom Cruise is super nice to the point of creepy, like he has dead and in his eyes simultaneously. Mary Harron, director of American Psycho, said that Christian Bale used Tom Cruise as inspiration for his performance in that movie, saying that Bale noticed how Cruise just had this very intense friendliness with nothing behind the eyes. Some podcasts described IRL Tom Cruise as what you'd get if an alien programmed a robot to be a nice guy. Bill Hader worked with Tom Cruise on Tropic Thunder and said he was the nicest, down-to-earth person ever. When he went to the premiere, he saw Tom without all the makeup and was immediately starstruck. Tom walked over, introduced himself to Bill's family, and asked him all the stuff they talked about on set. Newsflash: actors are nice to other actors. Cruise treated a colleague of mine like total fucking shit behind closed doors for months of post-production. All that hearts and minds shit with cakes and handshakes and remembering crew names with a grin is just politician-style parlor tricks. It's meticulous, contrived, dead-eyed PR, and Reddit laps it up because he does stunts. I worked for an indie film company at the end of the dot-com boom. We were expanding rapidly, far beyond our means. The bosses had rented a huge multi-floor office space with tons of desks and computers, but very few employees because there was very little work coming in the door. One day, some VC investors were coming down to check us out. The bosses had us run around and put fake work on all of the computer screens, and used coffee cups, and jackets and sweaters on empty chairs, all to appear as if we were a huge bustling office, and they had just happened to come by when the entire staff was out to lunch. It was like that scene in The Sting, or a similar scene in The Grifters, where some con men fake a bustling office. The deception was shameless and probably illegal, and we all felt horrible for having been forced to participate. This reminds me of the story how Accuracy International got the contract for producing sniper rifles for the UK Army around early 90s. Their rifle won the contest as the best rifle, but the brass wanted to visit their workshop, just to make sure they were not just two guys in garage, which they actually were. So they rented a full kit workshop for a day, put rifle barrels etc. everywhere. The brass came around, stayed a few minutes and declared that everything looks good. Since it's a good story, I'll name drop. Will Smith was in Budapest with some of the production team for the world premiere of Gemini Man. Will stopped by the Buda Castle and shook hands and took selfies with all the tourists gathered there. Then later in the evening he held a concert in the downtown area. He didn't have to do any of that, but they shot a portion of the movie there, and he liked the city and wanted to do something for the people. Walking around town that day, everyone was pretty hyped about Will being there, and it was a fun atmosphere at night during the concert. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.